Life is full of this. It's the one thing that we can never get rid of, and yet most people are spending their lives trying to get rid of it. Welcome to the Serenity Journey. My name is James, and I'm here to guide you on your pathway to inner peace. If you're new here, we talk about our journey to inner peace. One of the biggest things that we've been talking about is we're going into ourselves, is we're trying to find peace within ourselves and find peace with other people and find peace in the world as a whole. One of the biggest things that we find is we find conflict. We find conflict within ourselves, and we find conflict with other people. We find conflict with our conditions. Conflict is one of the biggest struggles the world faces. And yet so many people want to eliminate conflict by forcing the world to their point of view, because their need to be right is more important than their need to accept and allow others to be as they are, because they're not at peace with themselves, and so they have to bring that conflict to other people. The only way we can resolve conflict with the world is to find a way to resolve the conflict within ourselves. And the only way we can do that is with compassion and with love and with peace, from a place of serenity. In the serenity prayer, it doesn't say, help me to accept the things that I cannot change so that I can have serenity. It's the opposite. It says, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. And so many people are trying to do this backwards. They're trying to find the serenity through resolving conflict instead of finding the resolution of conflict through serenity, through finding peace with yourself, through finding your own place of peace inside. You're going to be able to resolve conflict, but you cannot resolve conflict outside of yourself until you're at peace with who you are, with where you're coming from, with where you're going, with what you want. Life is full of this. It's the one thing that we can never get rid of, and yet most people are spending their lives trying to get rid of it. Now, sometimes we have to find it as we find peace within ourselves, then we have to let go of the things outside of ourselves that bring us back to conflict. And sometimes we have to learn to allow others to live their life, but that doesn't mean we accept them being in ours. I can love people who have different points of view than me and still not want that point of view in my life. But I'm surrounded by people in most of life, in most of the places that I go, in many of the places that I talk to people. I'm surrounded by people who think that the only way to resolve conflict is to force the world to their point of view, because their need to be right is more important than their need to be at peace. This is happening religiously with various religions around the world. This is happening politically. This is happening with how do we respond to this coronavirus that is going on around the world. It is full of this kind of conflict. Life is full of it. And yet people want to experience life free of it. I don't believe that we're ever meant to live life without conflict. But when we find peace, when we find serenity inside of ourselves, and we go to that place and we look at our conflict from that place, now we can look at it in a more objective and observable way. And now we can find a sense of harmony in conflict. We can find that there's harmony in conflict, because conflict helps us to recognize what we desire in our lives, what we want to bring about in the world. One of the reasons why we have so much conflict is because people are trying to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution to problems in the world. Or they want somebody else to take care of the problem in the world, or they want somebody else to take responsibility. And they're not willing to take any responsibility for themselves and what they're doing to contribute to the problem. So many people I see complaining about the problems in the world, they're actually doing more to contribute to the problem than to help resolve it. Most people that I see complaining about a problem are doing more to contribute to the problem than they are to help resolve it. I love this quote from Albert Einstein. He said, "You cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it." And so much of the world is trying to resolve problems from the same mind that created the conflict, that created the problem, that created the challenges that we face. You have to rise above it. You have to change your consciousness around the subject. You have to find a place of peace and serenity with yourself in that subject. You can be at serenity in the aspect of abundance and money and wealth and not be at peace in the aspect of relationships with other people, with your spouse. You can be at peace in the subject of abundance and wealth and not be at peace in the subject of your own career, which is generally how we gain wealth. And that creates a conflict, because if you're in conflict in your career, but you have this open mindset and this good place with money, you're in a weird juxtaposition of places. At the same time, we have to realize that we can create this ability in ourselves to have peace in each of these aspects of our lives. We have different aspects of what's important to us. And how we approach that is going to determine how much peace we have with it. How we approach other people, how we approach the problem itself is going to determine our peace with it. And it can take us into peace and deeper into peace, or it can take us away from peace. We have to find a balance in the polarities within ourselves. That's really where we're finding peace, is when you find a balance in your own inner polarity. Your own inner conflict is really a polarity, because every subject has two polarities. It has a positive polarity and it has a negative polarity. Everything has this. And so when we start looking at things, if we focus too much on the positive polarity, that negative polarity is there, we're just ignoring it. If we're too focused on the negative polarity, the positive polarity is there, we're just ignoring it. We get to choose which one we focus our attention on. And when you find the neutral ground and you find the middle, this is where we have the most power. This is where we have the power to create change. This is where we have the power to find harmony in life. This is why I think serenity is so critical to changing the consciousness of this planet. The more we can bring people into serenity and into peace with themselves, the more we can find serenity and peace with the world. But we'll never do that as long as we're stuck in polarity, as long as we're stuck in positive or negative polarity. If you're focused on being positive and being a light worker, I love light workers, by the way. I have a lot of friends who are light workers, and I embrace you and I love you and I think you are beautiful people. But sometimes you ignore the darkness because you're so focused on the light. And this can lead to a level of arrogance that actually does more harm than good. And I know light workers don't like to see that, because light workers want to see that everything that they're doing is good. But the fact is, most of the light workers that I know, and I know quite a few of them, sometimes bring a level of arrogance in their ideas about the light, because it's an ego-based version of reality. They're still operating out of this sense of ego, and yet many of them are denying that they're working out of the ego while they're doing it. We have to develop this radical humility within ourselves and recognize that we are all beings of light and darkness. Every one of us. And we have to have that polarity in order to continue to exist. And so finding serenity is finding the harmony and the balance between our own light and our own darkness. And if you're denying your darkness, you are not in serenity, you are not in peace, and you are not in balance and harmony with yourself. I think one of the most important principles that I'm talking about is I start teaching and sharing some of the principles of spirituality that I think are some of the most important. One of those principles is harmony. And part of that harmony is the harmony between our own light and darkness, the harmony between our own ego and our spiritual consciousness. And we have to find a harmony between the two, because we will never be free of the ego as long as we inhabit a body in this reality. Because having an ego is a part of that connection to the body. Once you let go of the ego, you let go of the connection to the body. And so I have an ego, and it influences the work that I do, and it influences the work of every single person I've ever met. One of the things that frustrates me the most is seeing people that are trying to resolve conflict and claiming to be free of ego. And I see a lot of light workers claiming to be free of the ego, and yet they're not. And you see the stamp of their ego all over their work. And as long as you're ingrained in ego consciousness and denying that you are, then you are not really bringing light. You're bringing an illusion of light. You're not bringing the light. If you want to bring more light, you have to embrace your own darkness. You have to dive deep. Of course, as I study astrology, I've been studying astrology for the last year, and I am very heavy in Scorpio. I've been studying in Scorpio, including my sun, my mind, which is Mercury, Uranus, my North Node, which is my destiny, and I tread deep into the psychology of what people are doing. I dive deep into the taboo. I dive deep into the darkness. And I have literally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, I have walked in the darkness in my own life. And I have gone into the darkness of my own soul. And I have gone into the darkness of other people's as well. And some people don't like that because I reflect that back to them and I show that to them, and they don't want to face it. And this is where we have conflict. When people are not wanting to face their own darkness, they cause conflict. They create conflict because they're trying to create an illusion of light instead of being their own light. You can't truly be your own light until you learn to be your darkness. So the best way to resolve this kind of conflict, the pathway to resolving this kind of conflict, is in embracing your light and your darkness, in finding the serenity and the harmony and the balance within your own self. And this is not easy to do. It takes years of work sometimes. The more you have shadow work, this is what shadow work's all about. Shadow work is really about embracing your darkness and bringing love to it and loving yourself. I love this from Kyle Cease. He tells you to not to try to eliminate your darkness, is to sit with it and love yourself for it. Not in spite of it, for it, with it. Allow your darkness to be a part of who you are. And the funny thing is many times once you just acknowledge it and sit with it and love it, the pain, the scars, the trauma that it caused in your life fades away. And the more you can find that kind of love and peace for yourself, the more you can find it for other people, and you can resolve conflict. How are we going to resolve the conflict? We have to stop expecting our way to be the only way to solve a problem. I think, when it comes to these vaccines and whether we should be taking them or not, I think some people need the vaccine that aren't getting it, and there's some people taking it that are actually doing more harm than good because they don't need it, and it's actually harming them to do it. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution to that problem. And that's the biggest problem. Everybody wants their way to be the way for everybody. And we have to let go of that idea. We have to let go of that concept that my way has to fit everybody else, and realize and accept that my way fits me. And this is what I want in my life. And I will surround myself with the people that agree with that. And I will surround myself with people that do not deny me for that. At the same time, I will love you and allow you to have your own opinion, your own way of being, your own way of doing things, as long as you're not trying to force me to yours. Your idea of right and wrong is just that, your idea of right and wrong. but it doesn't need its mind. And if we're going to resolve conflict in relationships, in our careers, in our conflict with money, we have to accept our light and our darkness in both areas, in all of these areas. And we have to be able to let go of our attachment to them. I hope that these ideas might help you to start seeing a way to resolve your own conflict and break free of the darkness and break free of these chains that are holding you back. If you want to see more about how to create this sense of peace, make sure you check out this video that's right here. We'll see you over there, and you have a fantastic day.